continues to operate what we think of as the safest dollar settlement infrastructure on the internet. USDC's entire composition.
And just like, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to get into a whole pitch for like Circle. I'm just trying to understand, did you take measures to increase the diversity or liquidity of your dollar holdings?
Sure.
Mr. Disparte, I want to start with you when Mr. Lucas asked you what lessons you learned from this period on March 10th when, that essentially broke the buck, if you will, on stablecoin, and you had mentioned that, I think you said you were exposed to some risks in the banking sector. I want to challenge you a bit on that because there were no money market funds that broke the buck and they were just as exposed to the banking sector. First question, just do I have it right that you had about $40 billion in cash deposits on March 9th, of which $3.3 billion was at SVB, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you, since that point, taken any efforts to increase your dollar holdings, diversify your dollar? I mean, what have you done to protect against the fact that you did have exposure to a part of the banking sector, but not to the majority of your dollar holdings?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Congressman. The Circle, prior to the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, continues to operate what we think of as the safest dollar settlement infrastructure on the internet. USDC's entire composition.
And just like, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to get into a whole pitch for like Circle. I'm just trying to understand, did you take measures to increase the diversity or liquidity of your dollar holdings?
Sure. Today, the cash component of USDC is held at a large cash custodian, New York bank, and the remainder, typically 80% of USDC, is short-dated U.S. Treasuries.
Okay.
Of 90 days or less.
Okay. And what was the volume was there a significant volume of loss on the trading during that period before you got back to the dollar peg?
Well, yes, USDC lost about $10 billion of circulation, but we think of it as fulfilling the right that the coin holder has of redemption at par for a US dollar, even in a situation of extreme stress in the banking system. The three banks that failed had connectivity to the digital assets industry, although their failure wasn't caused by the industry.
Understood. So I asked that question, and now I just want to put a question to all of you. And I was going to ask you to all be New Yorkers in 1975, but then I realized some of you may be conflicted out from that question. So let me ask instead that you were all Michiganders in 2013. The largest city in your state's about to go bankrupt. You were all the treasurer of Michigan. Would you support legislation that would allow states to print paper money issued by the state of Michigan with a peg to the US dollar without any approval from the Fed that would allow you to print your way out of the bankruptcy of Detroit? Would any of you support that legislation, or would that feel like moral hazard to you?
So I'll answer that one and say, one, no, you shouldn't be having unbacked instruments, but two, they're
backed. They're backed by the Fed. We're going to mandate that the Fed has to fully back that Michigan dollar.
So I would say I think the model you should think about in this context is things like prepaid cards or money market funds, which you referenced, so
look,
no.
I'm just asking, should you be able to print, as we did before the Civil War, just have states print currency, but then say that the federal government is going to backstop that currency? I mean, it feels like a big moral hazard to me, right? I mean, you would create a bunch of. Now, the reason I ask that is because Section 103 of the draft legislation says that a stablecoin issuer could ask for approval from a state. That state would then could then choose to accept that, and the Federal Reserve would have to approve that within 60 days. The Fed would have no backstop. So you could have a situation, I mean, look, it's currency, right? You could have a situation under Section 103 of this rule where if I am a state, if I'm New York in 1975, if I'm Michigan, or if I'm the next state that's facing a fiscal crisis, I can just say, can somebody please issue a stable coin so that I can back my way through this and dump all the risk on the American taxpayer?
Yeah, I would say that is the value of the reserve guidelines that are also within this bill, is that to create a stable coin.
But I'm asking, should the Fed not have the right, if we are going to give the Fed the obligation to backstop that risk? And the reason I framed this by starting about the Circle question is the money market funds did not blow up because, for better or for worse, there's a Fed backstop. Ms. Head, with the time I have remaining, do you have any thoughts